I found my late wife's diary. Now I'm raising another man's child alone. I was kneeling in our closet, sorting through boxes of my late wife's belongings, when I found the diary hidden behind a false panel in our shoe organizer. It was a small leather-bound book, burgundy with gold edges, tucked into a zippered compartment I'd never noticed in 2 years of living in this house without her. My hands trembled as I pulled it out, recognizing Sarah's handwriting on the first page. Private thoughts, for my eyes only. I should have respected that, should have put it back, left her secrets buried with her. But I'd been drowning in grief for 2 years, desperate for any connection to the woman I'd loved since college, and the thought of reading her unfiltered thoughts felt like giving a piece of her back. So I opened it, and what I found inside destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and my daughter. My name is David, and I'm 35 years old. 2 years ago, my wife Sarah died in a car accident along with my best friend Trevor. They were driving back from a work conference together when a drunk driver crossed the median on the interstate. Both died instantly. I got the call at 2 in the morning, and my entire world shattered. Sarah was 33, beautiful and brilliant, a marketing executive who lit up every room she entered. We'd been together since junior year of college, married for 10 years. Our daughter Lily had just turned 6 when Sarah died. Now she's 8, and we've been navigating this grief together, just the two of us, trying to figure out how to live in a world without the person we both loved most. Trevor had been my best friend since high school. He was the best man at my wedding, the first person I called with good news or bad, the brother I never had. His death hit almost as hard as Sarah's. I lost my wife and my best friend in the same moment, and the grief was suffocating. The first year after their deaths was survival mode. Getting Lily to school, making sure she ate, helping her process her feelings while barely processing my own. Therapy for both of us, grief counseling, support groups, putting one foot in front of the other because Lily needed me to keep going. The second year was supposed to be about healing, about slowly rebuilding our lives. I'd started going through Sarah's things, deciding what to keep for Lily, what to donate, what to hold on to for myself. It was painful but necessary. We couldn't live in a shrine to Sarah forever, even though part of me wanted to. That's what I was doing when I found the diary. It was a Saturday afternoon. Lily was at her friend's house for a play date. I decided to tackle Sarah's closet, which I'd barely touched since her death. Her clothes still hung there, her shoes still lined the floor, her scarves and jewelry still organized just the way she liked them. I'd been working for about an hour when I noticed the shoe organizer on the back of the door looked oddly thick. Upon closer inspection, I found a hidden zippered pocket I'd never noticed before. Inside was the diary, along with a few old photographs in a flash drive. The diary wasn't old. The first entry was dated about a year before Sarah died. My heart raced as I opened it, sitting cross-legged on our closet floor surrounded by boxes of her sweaters and dresses. The early entries were mundane. Notes about work projects, frustrations with her boss, funny things Lily had said. Then I found an entry from 9 years ago that made my blood run cold. I don't know how to write this. I don't know how to admit it even to myself, but I'm pregnant, and I'm terrified because I don't know if the baby is David's or Trevor's. I read that line 5 times, trying to make it say something different, trying to make the words rearrange themselves into a meaning that didn't destroy everything. But there was no other interpretation. Sarah had been sleeping with Trevor, and Lily, my daughter, might not be mine. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, couldn't breathe. The closet walls seemed to press in on me. This couldn't be real. Sarah wouldn't do this. Trevor wouldn't do this. Not to me, not the two people I loved and trusted most in the world. But as I kept reading, the truth laid itself out in Sarah's careful handwriting. The affair had started 9 years ago, right around when Sarah got pregnant with Lily. She'd been going through something at work, feeling stressed and undervalued. I'd been traveling constantly for my job, gone more than I was home. Trevor had been there, supportive and attentive in ways I apparently wasn't. It happened at his apartment one night after they'd had too much wine. Sarah wrote about the guilt, the shame, the immediate regret. She ended it the next morning, told Trevor it could never happen again. He agreed. They both pretended it never happened.
Then, 3 weeks later, Sarah found out she was pregnant. We'd been trying for a baby, so the timing seemed perfect. I was thrilled. But Sarah wrote about her panic, her terror that the baby might not be mine. She never told me, never told Trevor. She wrote about doing the math over and over, trying to figure out the timing. We'd had sex during the window when Lily was conceived, so it was possible she was mine. But Trevor's night with her was right in that same window. When Lily was born, Sarah wrote about staring at her face, trying to find resemblances. Lily had my mother's nose, Sarah's eyes, features that could belong to either family. There was nothing definitive to prove paternity one way or another. Sarah made a choice in those early days after Lily's birth. She decided that I was Lily's father, regardless of biology. I was the one who'd wanted this baby, who'd been at every doctor's appointment, who'd held Sarah's hand through labor. Trevor didn't even know there was a question. Sarah decided to bury the truth and never speak of it again. The diary entries about it stopped after Lily's first few months. Sarah seemed to have made peace with her decision. The affair was never mentioned again in her writings, until I found an entry from 8 months before she died. Trevor knows. I don't know how he figured it out, but he pulled me aside at David's birthday party and asked me directly if Lily was his daughter. I denied it. I said I didn't know what he was talking about. But he didn't believe me. He said he'd been thinking about the timing for years, had started to notice how much Lily looks like his sister did at that age. He wants a paternity test. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the diary. Trevor had known? Or suspected? And he'd confronted Sarah about it 8 months before they both died. I kept reading, desperate and dreading what came next. Sarah had refused the paternity test, told Trevor he was insane, that one drunken mistake 9 years ago didn't make him a father. She'd written about how angry Trevor had gotten, how he'd threatened to tell me everything if she didn't agree to the test. They'd fought about it for months, according to the diary entries. Trevor pushing for answers, Sarah refusing to give them. She wrote about her terror that I'd find out, that our marriage would be destroyed, that Lily would be caught in the middle of this nightmare. The last entry about it was from 2 weeks before the accident. I finally agreed to the paternity test. Trevor wore me down. We did it secretly, sent it to a lab that promised complete confidentiality. The results came back today. Trevor Wright, 99.97% probability of paternity. David Chen, me, excluded as biological father. Lily wasn't mine. The daughter I'd raised for 8 years, the little girl who had my mannerisms and called me daddy and looked at me like I hung the moon, she wasn't biologically mine. She was Trevor's daughter, my best friend's daughter, the product of my wife's affair. I pulled up a photo of Lily on my phone, really looked at her for the first time with this new information, and once I knew what to look for, I could see it. She had Trevor's smile, his dimples, his slightly crooked front tooth, his thick eyebrows. Features that I'd never questioned because why would I? She was my daughter. Of course she looked like people in our families. Except she didn't look like anyone in my family. She looked like Trevor's. I don't know how long I sat there staring at her picture. Long enough that the play date ended and Lily's friend's mother had to call me twice to remind me to pick her up. I was 45 minutes late getting her, apologizing profusely, barely able to form coherent sentences. Lily chattered the whole drive home about her play date, about the games they had played, and the snacks they had eaten. I made appropriate responses while my mind screamed the same thought over and over. She's not mine. She's not mine. She's not mine. That night, I made Lily's favorite dinner, spaghetti with meat sauce, and watched her eat while my own food went cold on my plate. She told me about a book she was reading at school, about a math problem she finally figured out, about how she wanted to try soccer in the spring. She was the same kid she'd been that morning, smart and funny and sweet, with Sarah's kindness and what I thought was my stubbornness, but was probably Trevor's. Nothing about her had changed. Everything about her had changed. After I put her to bed, I sat in the dark living room and tried to process what I had learned. Tried to figure out what this meant, what I was supposed to do with this information. The facts were clear. Sarah had cheated on me with my best friend. Lily was biologically Trevor's daughter, not mine. Sarah had known this for 8 months before she died and never told me. Trevor had known and was planning to claim his daughter. But Sarah and Trevor were both dead. They couldn't explain themselves, couldn't answer my questions, couldn't face the consequences of what they'd done. I was left alone with this knowledge that felt like poison in my veins. And Lily was upstairs sleeping, innocent and oblivious. The child of an affair between two people who died together and left me to deal with the aftermath. The rage came in waves over the following days. Rage at Sarah for betraying me, for lying to me for 9 years, for dying before I could confront her about it. Rage at Trevor for sleeping with my wife, for potentially being father to my daughter, for also dying before I could scream at him about his betrayal. But mostly rage at myself for not seeing it, for trusting them both so completely that the thought of them together never crossed my mind, for being so naive, so blind, so stupid. I looked back at our life together with new eyes. Trevor had always been around, at our house for dinners, at Lily's birthday parties, at family events. I thought he was there because he was my best friend, because he was practically family. Now I wondered if he'd been there because he was watching his biological daughter grow up, wanting to be close to her even if he couldn't claim her. Had Sarah felt guilty every time Trevor held Lily? Every time he bought her presents or played with her? Or had they shared secret looks, private knowledge that I was too oblivious to notice? I tortured myself with these thoughts while maintaining a facade of normalcy for Lily. Got her to school, helped with homework, made dinners, enforced bedtimes. She never knew that every time I looked at her now, I saw Trevor's features instead of mine. The question that haunted me most was whether I should tell her. She was 8 years old. Did she have a right to know her biological father? Did I have a right to keep it from her? If Trevor were alive, the answer might be different, but he was dead. Telling Lily would mean explaining that her mother had an affair, that her real father was Uncle Trevor, who died in the same crash that killed her mom, and that I wasn't actually her dad, even though I'd raised her since birth. What purpose would that serve except to shatter her sense of identity and security? She'd already lost her mother. Did she need to lose her father too? At least the father she'd always known?
I called my sister Beth 3 weeks after finding the diary. Didn't tell her what I'd discovered, just said I needed someone to watch Lily for a weekend. I drove 2 hours to a cabin we used to rent for family vacations and spent 2 days alone trying to figure out what to do. I made lists, pros and cons, arguments for telling the truth versus keeping the secret. I thought about what Sarah would want, what Trevor would want, what was best for Lily. The truth was brutal. Lily would be devastated. She'd lost her mother 2 years ago and was still processing that grief. Learning that her father wasn't actually her biological parent would destabilize everything. She'd question every memory, every moment of our relationship. She'd wonder if I really loved her or if I was just going through the motions out of obligation. And the worst part was that I didn't know the answer to that anymore. Did I love her because she was my daughter? Or did I love her because I'd raised her and bonded with her regardless of biology? Would I have felt the same way about her if I'd known from the beginning she wasn't mine? I wanted to believe that biology didn't matter, that 8 years of being her father counted for more than DNA. But I also felt betrayed and hurt and angry. And those feelings bled into how I looked at Lily now. I'd catch myself pulling away when she wanted a hug, hesitating before saying I love you, questioning whether my feelings were real or just habit. That terrified me more than anything. Lily had done nothing wrong. She was an innocent child who'd lost her mother and deserved a father who loved her unconditionally. But I couldn't reconcile the daughter I'd known with the reality of who she actually was. By the end of that weekend, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to tell Lily the truth. Not now, maybe not ever. She'd been through enough trauma. I was the only parent she had left, and destroying that relationship by revealing her mother's affair and her true paternity would be cruel. But I also couldn't keep the diary and the paternity test results. Having them in the house felt like keeping loaded guns around. So, on my last morning at the cabin, I built a fire in the fireplace. I read through the diary one final time, memorizing the words that had upended my life. Then I fed it into the flames page by page, watching Sarah's handwriting curl and blacken and turn to ash. The photographs went next, followed by the flash drive with the paternity test results. I watched it all burn, destroying the only evidence that existed of Sarah and Trevor's affair and Lily's true parentage. When it was done, I scattered the ashes in the woods behind the cabin. The secret was buried now, as completely as I could manage. I drove home feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because the physical evidence was gone, heavier because the knowledge remained locked in my head with no way to unlearn it. Lily ran to greet me when I got home, throwing her arms around my waist and chattering about everything she and Aunt Beth had done that weekend. I hugged her back and tried to feel what I used to feel, uncomplicated love for my daughter. Instead, I felt complicated and confused and sad. The next months were an exercise in pretending. I pretended to be the same father I'd always been. I went through all the motions, school pickups, bedtime stories, weekend activities. To anyone watching, including Lily, everything was normal. But inside, I was drowning. Every time Lily called me dad, I heard the unspoken caveat, "But you're not really my dad." Every time she smiled Trevor's smile or laughed Trevor's laugh, I was reminded of the betrayal. Every time she told me she loved me, I wondered if she'd still love me if she knew the truth. I started seeing a therapist, told him a modified version of the truth, that I'd discovered my late wife had an affair with my late best friend, but hadn't told him about Lily's paternity. We discussed grief and betrayal and complicated relationships. The therapist asked me point blank during one session, "Do you still love your daughter?" I sat with that question for a long time. "I don't know," I finally admitted. "I love who I thought she was. I don't know how to love who she actually is." "Who is she actually? Has she changed, or has your perception of her changed?" "Both," I said. "She's the same kid, but she's also the living proof of my wife's affair. Every time I look at her, I see that betrayal. Is that fair to her?" "No," I admitted. "None of this is fair to her. But I don't know how to separate her from what Sarah and Trevor did. She's the consequence of their choices." The therapist was quiet for a moment. "You have a choice too. You can let this knowledge poison your relationship with your daughter, or you can choose to love her regardless of biology. The first choice punishes an innocent child for her parents' mistakes. The second choice is harder, but it's the one that preserves your family." I knew he was right, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are different things. The breakthrough came 6 months after I found the diary. Lily got sick with a bad case of flu and was running a high fever. I stayed up with her all night, changing cool washcloths on her forehead, giving her medicine, holding her while she cried that she felt terrible. Around 3 in the morning, delirious with fever, she said, "I miss Mommy, but I'm glad I still have you, Daddy. You're the best dad in the whole world." I broke down crying, sobbed while she drifted off to sleep, unaware that she'd just cracked open something in my chest that had been hardening for months. She was right. I was her dad. Maybe not by biology, but by every choice I had made for 8 years. I was the one who'd walked the floor with her when she had colic as a baby. I'd changed her diapers and taught her to ride a bike and helped her learn to read. I'd comforted her after nightmares and celebrated her achievements and held her while she grieved her mother. Trevor's DNA might have created her, but I had raised her, and that had to count for something. That had to count for everything. Sitting in her dark room that night, listening to her labored breathing as the fever slowly broke, I made a real decision. Not the decision to hide the truth, I had already made that one, but the decision to actually be her father again. To love her the way I used to, without the shadow of Sarah and Trevor's betrayal coloring everything. It wasn't instant. You can't flip a switch and erase months of resentment and hurt, but I started trying. Started forcing myself to engage fully instead of going through the motions. Started looking for the things about Lily that were uniquely hers, not inherited from Sarah or Trevor, but developed through her own personality and experiences. She was empathetic, always worried about other people's feelings. She was curious, asking endless questions about how things worked. She was brave, willing to try new things even when they scared her. Those traits weren't from anyone's DNA. They were just Lily, the person she was becoming. I started seeing her as herself again, instead of as the embodiment of a betrayal. It took time and effort and lots of therapy, but gradually the anger faded and the love returned. Real love, not obligatory love. The kind of love that exists regardless of biological connection. A year after finding the diary, Lily and I were having breakfast on a Saturday morning when she said something that stopped me cold. "Dad, do you think Mom and Uncle Trevor are together in heaven?" I looked up from my coffee. "What made you think of that?" She shrugged, pushing her cereal around the bowl. "I was just thinking about how they died together and how they were such good friends. It makes me sad that they're gone, but maybe they're not lonely because they have each other." There was such innocence in that statement, such simple, childlike logic. She had no idea of the complicated, painful truth behind their friendship and their deaths, and she never would if I had anything to say about it. "Maybe," I said carefully. "Your mom loved Uncle Trevor very much. They were good friends. Do you miss him?" The honest answer was complicated. I missed the Trevor I thought he was, my loyal best friend. I didn't miss the Trevor who slept with my wife and fathered my daughter. But Lily didn't need to know about that version. "I do miss him," I said. "He was important to me for a long time." Lily nodded, satisfied with that answer, and went back to her cereal. I watched her eat and felt a wave of protective love wash over me. This kid had been through so much. She deserved a father who could give her stability and love without conditions. I could be that father. I was choosing to be that father. 2 years have passed since I found that diary. Lily is 10 now, growing up fast, becoming more herself every day. She still has Trevor's smile and Sarah's eyes, but she's also got her own laugh and her own way of seeing the world that belongs to neither of them. We've built a good life, just the two of us. We have routines and traditions. We've made new memories that aren't shadowed by loss. She's thriving in school, has good friends, is generally happy despite the tragedy in her past. Sometimes I look at her and still see Trevor's features, but mostly I just see Lily, my daughter. Not because of biology, but because of choice. I chose to be her father every day for 10 years, and I'm choosing it still. The secret sits in my chest like a stone. Some days it's heavier than others. I think about telling her when she's older, when she's an adult who can process complex truths about her parents, but I'm not sure I ever will. What purpose would it serve except to hurt her? Sarah and Trevor are dead. Their affair ended 9 years ago.
The paternity question was answered but doesn't need to be shared. Lily is loved and cared for by the parent she has. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let secrets stay buried. I burned that diary to protect my daughter from a truth that would destroy her sense of self. I made the choice to be her father regardless of DNA. And I live with the weight of that knowledge alone because that's what parents do. We carry the heavy things so our children don't have to. Lily will never know that her mother betrayed me, that her Uncle Trevor was actually her biological father, and that the man raising her isn't genetically connected to her. She'll grow up believing she's mine, that our bond is unbreakable, that family is defined by love rather than biology. And maybe that's the truest thing anyway. Maybe family really is the people who show up, who stay, who choose to love you even when it's hard. By that definition, I'm Lily's father in every way that matters. I still miss Sarah sometimes. I miss the woman I thought she was, even though I'm angry at the woman she actually was. I miss Trevor too, or at least the friendship I thought we had. But mostly I focus on the present, on Lily's homework and soccer games and birthday parties, on building a future that isn't defined by the past. Last week, Lily asked me to help with a school project about family trees. We drew out the branches together, putting my parents and Sarah's parents at the top, then Sarah and me, then Lily at the bottom. She carefully wrote everyone's names in her neat handwriting. When she wrote Trevor White on a branch as Dad's best friend, I felt a pang in my chest. But I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her that Trevor belonged on a different branch connected directly to her. I just let her finish her project, praised her neat handwriting, and helped her mount it on poster board for school. Because that's what fathers do. We protect our children from painful truths when we can. We make hard choices about what they need to know and what they're better off not knowing. We carry secrets that would crush them if we shared the weight. I found my late wife's diary and learned a truth that shattered my world. But I'm not going to let it shatter my daughter's world too. She's already lost her mother. She's not going to lose her father because of choices two dead people made a decade ago. I'm David, and Lily is my daughter. Not because of biology, but because I raised her and loved her and chose her every single day. That's the truth that matters. That's the truth I'm going to live with and protect for both of us. The diary is ash. The test results are destroyed, the secret stays buried, and Lily and I move forward together, father and daughter in every way that counts.